Hello, my angels. It's me, Lord Nicolina, and welcome back to Angel Rise. This is the first episode I've made in a month, and honestly, it feels really good getting back to this series. Speaking of which, I've got 3 episodes planned for you all this month, including this one, and the other 2 will relate to Halloween. Also, since Canadian Thanksgiving is coming up around the time I'm recording this, a motivational speech in regards to thankfulness will be coming out this upcoming weekend. So I hope you're all excited for what's to come this month. With that being said, let's get on to this episode's topic. The topic of this episode will be something I mentioned twice before on this channel. To be specific, in episode 20 of Angel Rise, and my September 17th, 2022 update video, that being my move. And in this episode of Angel Rise, I will be going into more detail about the move and how it came to be. Let's start with how it all began. It was the week of March the 8th to 12th, 2022, and I was coming back to my mother's place from a walk. When I got in the house, my mother had something big to explain. So her and I go up to her room where she breaks the news to me. Her and I had to move. When she first told me this, I was honestly a little surprised, because I thought everything was still okay with us living where we were at the time. Don't get me wrong, things were a little sideways with my family at the time, but we were still on our feet. So why did we have to move? The reason is actually as simple as it sounds. Our neighbor's oldest daughter was getting married, and she wanted to stay close to the family farm. For clarification, the house my mother and I lived in at the time is located on a farm which is owned by the neighbors. So that's why I mentioned that our neighbor's oldest daughter wanted to stay close to the family farm. Speaking of our neighbors, they did help us a bit with the move. First off, they did give us a year to be moved out of the place, so I felt that was plenty of time to get packed up and moved out. Second of all, they did offer us a place that wasn't far from where we lived, thanks to a family friend they knew. However, the house was just outside our hometown, and I was a little skeptical about it. When my mother and I checked out the house, it honestly looked amazing. It was in the middle of renovations at the time, but it was coming along very nicely. It was definitely smaller than what my mother and I would have liked, but it felt like the perfect place for my mother and I to live in, since my sisters were not living with us. And it felt like the house on the farm, with a big front yard, though it was considerably smaller, and a considerably small backyard even though it was a little bigger. Still, I thought I couldn't ask for anything better than that. There was only one downside to this, however. We would only have the top floor of the house, since another family was occupying the basement. It was a huge bummer to me, but I still had high hopes nonetheless. For the first couple of months, my mother and I packed up a lot. But it was only the stuff we really didn't need. We saved the most important stuff for the actual moving day. As for the house we were offered, it was all but guaranteed at this point that we would get it, and my mother and I would be moved in there by mid-August of 2022. Around a month later, this is when things start to change. Around the same time my mother and I were preparing to move, my grandparents were also planning on moving. So I was helping them too, mostly with cleaning, getting rid/selling things that they didn't need, and packing up a few things for them. However, in that time, they changed their minds about moving and decided they were going to stay in the house that they were currently living in. It was primarily because of my grandpa's health problems and some financial issues as well. My mother and I then contemplated the idea of us moving in with them, an idea first brought up by my aunt. At first, I was a little skeptical about the idea, because I prefer that my mother and I, of course, live by ourselves. But at the same time, I felt like maybe Grandma and Grandpa could use a little company. This was definitely a period of uncertainty for my mother and I kept asking myself the same question. Were we moving into the house my neighbors offered? Or will we be moving into my grandparents' place? Around the same time as that, there was even a chance that we could have moved in with my aunt and uncle, as they were looking at a house too, but unfortunately they didn't get it. So it was down to the house our neighbors offered, or my grandparents' place. It was eventually decided that we would be moving into my grandparents' place and not the house that our neighbors offered. And it was for reasons stated earlier. When the decision was made official, to be honest, I was very excited. Probably even more than moving into the house we were originally offered. It's because I've made so many great memories at my grandparents' place, and the neighborhood it was in I've familiarized myself with so well, because I trick-or-treated a lot there when I was young. And plus, it would be like a reward for Grandma and Grandpa, because I helped them move some things in their original plan to move out of the house. The only question was, however, where was my stuff going to go? The answer was simple. The basement. It was decided that the left end of the basement, which was the rec room, more particularly at the far end, would be converted into my room, and that my grandpa's old workshop would be converted into my studio. That way I can make my drawings and record my videos in there. It was nothing short of being right up my alleyway, because the basement is no doubt about it my favorite part of my grandparents' place. And who was in charge of this? Who was going to make this happen? That would be my uncle, who's an experienced handyman. So there is no question he would do the best job he could to make this all happen. He was also in charge of combining the TV room and the spare bedroom upstairs into my mother's bedroom. I, meanwhile, was asked to help my uncle with the basement, which I did not hesitate to do so. I primarily helped with removing the wood paneling and wooden beams that have been up since the house was built in 1973, and no questions asked. Those panels and the large wooden beams were super heavy, but removing them was worth it. I even learned a technique from my uncle on how to remove them. That involved using a hammer and a crowbar, in which the hammer has to be hit on the front end of the crowbar for the flat part of the crowbar to get in, and then hitting the crowbar from the side to lift up the paneling and the beams. As for my room, the framework was all done by my uncle. I helped with drilling holes in some parts of the wooden frame so that the wiring could be pulled through to provide the lighting for my room. I also helped with putting up the drywall and screwing it down. As for converting my grandpa's old workshop into my studio, we basically had to remove all of my grandpa's old tools, and the new ones too. We moved them into either the shed outside or the fruit cellar that was located in the room itself. It was definitely tough work, and from time to time had some troubles with my uncle. But overall, the job was well worth it. Meanwhile, I was also helping my mother with moving things around the old house, since it was starting to get cramped with boxes. And I mean cramped. Specifically in the living room. And I kid you all not, my mother and I had a lot of things in that house. A freaking lot. That's honestly the best I can describe it. It's just funny to me now that I think of it. Anyways, because of this, we rented out not one, but 2 storage units. We basically stored what we wanted to keep because there wouldn't be enough room for it all at my grandparents' place. Because of the sheer amount of things we had. It was also a tough process. But with my strength entrusted in God, the job was fulfilled. During this process, I also learned how to build a box. And that's basically taking a box that's folded up, unfold it, put the flaps where they need to go while the box is upside down, and then use a tape gun to tape them up. It's as basic as it sounds, guys. And the tape going on the box, it's honestly the one sound I'll always remember from the move. Then the day itself came. September 29th, 2022. Moving day. It honestly didn't feel real to me. But it was real. The house I lived in for 12 years. The house I made so many amazing memories in. From the family gatherings, to my first cosplay, to my first comic, to my first set of drawings, to the first video on this channel, and everything in between. They were all there. And on that day, I walked out of that house for the last time. It definitely was emotional to say goodbye to the old house. But like the old saying goes, all good things must come to an end. It was time for a new beginning. A new era. An exciting one in my eyes. One of lending a helping hand to those we care about. And while we may not be perfect to start with, this will no doubt be a supporting move. Episode 21 is in the books, everyone. This was another episode that I definitely felt I had to make. And I have planned it since the middle of summer. And I knew once I got settled into my grandparents' place, I knew I had to make it. So I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this episode, definitely leave a like and share this with your loved ones. Spread the word about Angel Rise. For those of you who are new to the channel and would like to join this journey of mine, then please feel free to subscribe to join the blue and white Angel Brethren today. And click on the notification bell so that you are notified whenever I release new content. And check out my other videos too. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you all have a great day or night whenever you are watching this. And until we meet again, my name is Lord Nicolina. Be strong, stay positive, and God bless.